Nairobi.
Definitely, and the big question is, initially it was Adani deal, and now it's not Adani deal, yeah? Ken Gishinga, thank you very much for making time. When you see, we have a very interesting parliament. First of all, even before the broad-based government, we had the situation with the finance bill. The parliament went ahead and decided this is perfect for Kenyans. And then we had the Gen Z protest and they pulled back. And the president actually pulled down the bill. The parliamentarians clapped. With the Adani deal again, initially it was like it's moving forward, whether you like it or not. And again, it's being cancelled. They clapped. I'm flabbergasted. Are you as I am?
Absolutely no. I think it shows our parliament is not as independent as the constitution envisaged it to be. It gets a lot of directions from the executive.
Okay.
So it's time left, time right. And
yeah, definitely. Ken, even as we said that, just from the get-go, looking at this issue of Adani deal, it is a big deal in the country. Your first reaction when you saw the president say this one is cancelled, we're not dealing with Adani. I know the health situation they haven't addressed, but how did you process that move?
I think it was a surprise, given that we'd seen the minister confirm that even with the news from the US indicating that maybe Adani has been found with a corruption case in the US or in the New York, the minister had alluded to the fact that that fact will not affect the current deal in terms of the JK and the Ketraco electricity transmission. So we did not really, or I did not really expect to see the president say it has been cancelled, and acted surprised, especially when the MPs clapped, and we've seen them go and support the same. So I think that was my immediate reaction around this.
Definitely, yes. And it's quite concerning because apparently we had telltale signs. Yeah. And when you see, because after the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, whom we're going to be discussing later on matters taxation, you are the tax expert here. He says that we were still doing due diligence. Yeah. And again, is it Transport Cabinet Secretary, who's the former Energy Secretary? Yeah. Said we did a due diligence and we didn't find anything suspicious. We are seeing a lot of double talks going on. Does this inspire confidence even at the back of the State of the Nation address?
I think not really, and especially where government officers come out and say we did a due diligence. But again, some of these facts are coming out, and especially looking at the outcry from the citizens. Obviously, it doesn't come from nowhere. There must be something, and looking at the initial maybe indication on why this Adani deal was being prosecuted as much by Parliament is owing to the fact that, one, it just came out of a secrecy, and the public was made, or the public got to know this through whatever came out as a leakage of information. And I think from that perspective, then you expect that the public will think that there is something hidden in this deal, whilst it is not necessarily that there was something hidden. But ideally, when anything comes out as a secret, and especially looking at the breadth of that deal and what that was to do, looking at maybe the airport, maybe we would have had a concessionary agreement to have it under Adani for around 30 years. Then you'd look at proper public participation should have been done. And also looking at yesterday's presidential speech, I think he began by saying and alluding to the fact that leadership is about listening to the people. Yeah. But again, if you then don't involve the people in such huge decisions that involve the country, then you will expect there will be pushback from the citizens.
Definitely, very, very important. Ken, I'd like us to tangent into the big discussion on cost of living. Came in very strongly, and this marries closely with economic performance of the country. Listening to the president yesterday, he pointed some key figures in regards to allude to progress made by his administration. He pointed to inflation, saying that now we are 2.7%. We were pretty high back in the days, so we've managed inflation. Another thing he pointed is the stability of the Kenyan shilling. It was at 169 months ago, but they have intervened, and now it's 129 shilling as we speak to the dollar. And he say that is actually an indication that we are moving towards the right direction economically. Is that a way of sort of nitpicking data and utilizing it to your advantage, or is it really an indicator that we are moving towards the right direction policy-wise?
I think sometimes you have to use a statistic and go a bit deeper. For inflation, for example, the ideal level of inflation in Kenya is about 5%. That's what the CBK targets. And anytime you're above that, it means the economy is overheating. And anytime you're below that, especially as you approach 2.5, it's actually a problem. It means the economy is quite lethargic and there's not much activity. So how you interpret that 2.7% is quite critical. It's not a good place to be. It shows an economy is cooling down. An economy is actually approaching deflation, which is not a good thing. The best indicator for how an economy is operating is unemployment. That's really the gold standard of how an economy. Yes, you can have a good exchange rate. Yes, you can have reserves at the central bank. But really, the gold standard is unemployment. And until we get everybody to agree on that, we'll always be having this dual debate that seems to be playing between the government and the citizens.
Very, very important to point that out. I think conveniently left out or not touched too much is the taxation reforms that we are seeing in the country. Of course, with the bungled finance bill, there's been amendments introduced, and Treasury Cabinet Secretary has been very vocal about this particular situation. Josephat, bring us up to date. What are some of these reforms that are being introduced in the amendment tax laws bill in the country, and should the president have touched on it on his State of the Nation address?
Yes, I think the response to that question is yes, he should have addressed at least something around it. Remember, this was his first maybe State of the Nation address or speech after the demonstrations, which mostly covered the Finance Bill 2024. And I think he alluded to the fact that we are in an era where everybody is connected and information is flowing, and misinformation is also flowing in the same breath. And looking at what is out there might be misinformation. Remember, the Finance Bill 2024, even if it was rejected, did not necessarily mean that it had bad things. There were some good items within that bill, and we are seeing some being reintroduced within the current bills that we are seeing. That is the Tax Amendment Bill and the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill. And I think it should have been important for the President to at least mention some of these things, because and whilst he was addressing most of the concerns that have been raised by citizens, I think one of the concerns that he, I don't know whether it was deliberate, but one of the concerns that Kenyans have been raising and that he did not address was the issue of overtaxation. And looking at the bills and most citizens from where they sit, they always see any introduction in or any amendment in a tax bill being an increase in tax. But that has to be brought out that it's not necessarily an increase in tax. There are some, like looking at the current proposals, we did see them again within the Finance Bill 2024, looking at especially those that cushion those who are employed. We looked at, we are looking at increasing the thresholds of some of these allowable deductions in terms of what is allowable for the non-cash benefits for these non-employed. These were rates that were there from a very long time ago, and you would argue that currently, and looking at the economic status right now, you wouldn't say, for example, per diem, 2,000 is enough to as a subsistence allowance for any employee, looking at the current economic status. So we had seen that in the Finance Bill 2024, but unfortunately, it is not in these bills. Okay. Maybe it might be introduced later. Definitely. But I think, yes, the president missed out on that, and I think it would have been very, very much important to touch on the proposed amendments in the tax
Definitely.
bills. Yes.
Ken, as we wrap up briefly, and the element of taxation. We've seen the nature of with the bungled finance bill, now these amendments being introduced. Of course, now we are skeptical, but also everyone has information like what are these changes. From what you've gathered, are there things that we need to be privy of with these amendments being introduced as we finish up?
I think what Joseph has said is actually spot on, that there was a curiosity on where we are going as a tax policy in the country.
Yes.
Maybe it would not have been proper maybe to go into each line item as a proposal, but I think from a broad perspective, there should have been a mention on tax policy. What is Kenya's tax policy? And how far are we in crafting a new tax policy? Because the previous one hasn't quite been accepted by Kenyans. I think if he had anchored the conversation there, then now left the mandarins at Treasury now to build from there in terms of now the actual proposals. I think that would have set him up nicely. But the lack of the framework on what's a good tax policy for the country, I think for me that was a missed opportunity. Definitely.
And gentlemen, I know this has been quick, by the way. I don't know, it's because of the weekend. What date are we on? It's 22nd, yeah? I think the month is rushing, time is rushing, you know. But I really appreciate your input. Thank you very much, Josephat Karanja, Ken Gishinga, for your input. And I'm glad you guys matched your shots. I think you had a discussion about this. But ladies and gentlemen, as we put a full stop to business today, there is another interesting African saying. I like this one. It says that a roaring lion kills no game. Okay? You might have game, but if you roar and you're not doing something about it, you kill no game. At the end of the day, it's all about action. Thank you for joining with us on Business Today over the past 1 week. We put a full stop this week. My name is Noki Kimboy. And have yourself a great weekend. And let's meet next week. Same place, same time. For now, we're out. Sansana.